We are recording. Did it give me an option for record to the cloud? No. Okay, well, we'll just see how this goes. Great. Well, welcome everybody to the Crossplane SIG services sprint planning. So we're just going to do a quick overview of kind of what's in flight, and then turn our attention to kind of what's next out of the 0.3 milestone. So we'd like to go first in terms of items that are currently on the board.
Well, do you want to first just start with the in progress column and just get a status on those, just moving it straight down from the top to bottom?
Yeah, totally. So Dan, I think you're working 90?
Yep. So let's see, Friday afternoon / evening, I put in a PR for converting GCP cloud memory store, their like Redis managed service, to strongly typed resource classes. So that can kind of serve as a roadmap. There's a lot of documentation in the PR showing kind of what had to happen to implement it for just this one managed resource kind, and then what things would have to be repeated for other ones and which ones were just like one-time changes. So it should serve as a pretty good roadmap and discussion point for deciding how we're going to move forward with implementation. And so if people want to take a look at that, then it can work alongside with everything else we have in terms of default resource classes and such. Although you won't be able to do traditional defaulting or deprecated defaulting with Cloud Memory Store anymore, obviously, because it's moving to the new one. But so yeah, it's ready to be reviewed, and I feel pretty good about implementing for, across the board if we want to. But that might be something we want to talk about and see if it's something, when we kind of ensure fidelity of the existing managed resources, that's something that maybe, because we're moving to strong typing for the resource classes, that's kind of like a natural hand-in-hand thing that goes together. So I don't know if we want to do that together, in which case it might be more of an incremental process.
Great. Any questions or comments on this from other folks? As far as using this as a basis, has anybody had a chance to take a look at this? And I think the next thing on the epic for that one is to kind of do it across all the resources. So, so what would need to happen to try and pull that into the next sprint, Dan? We just need to get this reviewed and then start working on applying that pattern to all the resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, that could be a one-time thing or something that kind of breaks out into further issues, or something that becomes somewhat part of the epics that we have, the 3 different epics we have for the cloud providers. That could be something that is included in that if we decide to do it on an incremental or on a provider-based approach.
Cool. Okay, so moving on, 502. Mubafik, do you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, so basically I think I got the folder structure laid out. Today I was like 10 minutes ago or something, I was writing the description for the PR. But I am not sure about a few things, so I will sync with Jared on them. And also we will, I guess, still need the nested flag, our addition to controller tools, because of like multiple grouping is still not supported in Kube Builder. So yeah, I think I will need like 1 or 2 days for this, because like I'm also, we will move the cloud providers out of 3. So basically I am also preparing the structure for this so that we can just move the folder out and everything would hopefully be working. So yeah, but it's not complete yet.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for the effort on getting this bootstrapped here, Mubafik. I think that this is, this is one of the big blocker or, kind of bottleneck here for making progress on moving out all of the specific providers to their own repo. So, any help or any sort of parallelization that we can do for this to kind of, upfront get this done and accomplished would be good. Did you happen to already have kind of a little write-up of like what the transition would look like, or what are the parts, the changes that we need to make here?
Yeah. So actually, I was writing that in the PR description that compares like the old structure and the new one, and also like what is recommended by KubeBuilder v2 documents. And like I think for some of them we may not want to implement them, or just like skip some of them. But yeah, I was planning to sync with you tonight or like today for you. And then like move forward with this. But I think like tomorrow we could have something that is mergeable and ready to review.
Awesome. Yeah, super excited about that 2.0 KubeBuilder coming into the repo. So it's been a long time in the coming. So thanks for helping out with that.
No problem.
Okay. So that's been updated now. And then 634. So we just talked about consider strongly typed resource classes, and then this is the actual implementing it, Dan, for the GCP Cloud Memory Store.
Yep. So the PR that's out there will close that if/when merged.
Okay, cool. And then resource classes can be validated and annotated. So that's the epic. So that makes sense to be in progress. So maybe we could take a quick look at that and then see what's next, I guess, in that.
Yeah, so just for kind of like context here, this epic includes some like legacy issues, if you will, and some more like in our new style with epics and such. So for instance, like 90 is in progress right now, but it's a very broad issue, which we probably wouldn't create a feature like that now in our new structure. So like it could be in progress. It would essentially be in progress in parallel with the epic. So just for tracking purposes, that's kind of the way that is. But I think if we scroll down and the issues listed here, so yeah, it's basically just, implement for Cloud Memory Store, and then implement for all, and then update documentation and update examples as essentially the roadmap for that.
Okay. So are you comfortable? This is probably a pretty big lift for this current sprint. Do you just want to have 90 on the board, or do you want to pull, I guess we can circle back to this, but 594 would probably be like the one after that. So
yeah, so 90 really, like I said, kind of encompasses the whole epic. So it doesn't really matter. I have it in progress because everything that we do is kind of a part of it. Because it's just generally like strongly typed resource classes would be nice. It's fine to have in progress. I would say I would like to have, and I think this is potentially the goal, to have strongly typed resource classes across the board by the end of the sprint. Some of that's obviously going to depend on the discussion around that, and if we can come to agreement on how that looks and the path for doing that. But I would like to have it implemented across the board, which would essentially, assuming that documentation can be completed as well, which shouldn't be too much of an issue, would essentially close the issue, or close the epic, excuse me.
okay, so it sounds like 90 is really more related to the epic level. And then maybe what we want is, so one option would be to refactor this to be like feature scoped. The other option would be to leave this as it is, just reference it down here as like related, like this is the original like monster issue for this number 90. And then we can create a new like feature issue for this one, and then kind of remove 90 here and the new feature issue there.
Right. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what a feature issue would look like for 90. We have the feature issues for, create it for GCP Cloud Memory Store, and then we have create for all. If we want to add additional ones, I'd be happy to do that as well. If we think we need them, which I think would just break down potentially the implement for all. That's the only more granular thing I could think of doing. So
yeah, it would probably be pretty similar to this, and then you could just pull it out like, here's all of the things we're going to update, or you could just say star, or however minimal you want to go with it. But yeah, something kind of similar to 634.
Okay. Do you think that we scroll down just a bit and let's see? I think there's one for. Is there? Okay. Yeah, there's not. Okay. Cool. So I see. So just basically duplicate 634 for spreading across. That sounds great.
Yeah, and then we can just tweak the 90 to be kind of at the epic level. And so I'll just kind of say something like,
Dan, do you know what is currently is the percentage of like strongly typed resource classes in the repository?
0.
0? Okay.
Yeah. So they're enabled to be implemented in the pattern that's displayed in the PR for Cloud Memory Store, but that would be the first one to actually implement strongly typed resource classes. And there's kind of like two things moving in parallel here. So the strongly typed resource classes are at the what I'll call the infrastructure stack level, whereas the other components like the shared reconciler and that sort of thing for defaulting and policies, which are like default resource classes and strongly typed resource classes are very tightly interwoven. So when you get in the PR, I kind of have like this system of saying, this is something that has to happen every time you update any managed kind. This is something that just had to happen in this PR, or this is something that has to happen every time you update a managed kind for which the claim kind has not had an underlying managed kind updated before. So there's kind of like a lot of moving parts there, which that's the reason why I somewhat supported the idea of just doing it all across the board, even before we break out.
So do you think giving some flexibility for having a mix of strongly typed and not typed resource classes is good, or do you think we should at some point having this, like unit test or integration test which checks for all the types to be strongly typed?
Yeah, so I think the goal is that for all resource classes to be strongly typed. I don't know if we might have some generic one for, I don't know, for some like arbitrary functionality, but the idea is that like for all of the providers, we would like strongly typed resource class for all the managed kinds, I believe.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dan, I'm feeling like to minimize the the transitional period that we live in, and minimize like the cognitive load that the team has to undergo. It seems like doing all the types in one pass. It seems like the desired way to go about that.
Definitely. Yeah. So if y'all want to take a look at that PR, then you can add comments there and discussion. I'm sure there'll be some things that, maybe some patterns we want to update. But besides that, I mean, once that's good to go, we have a good roadmap to implement for the rest pretty quickly, I believe.
Yeah, I took a quick look at it last night, and that was my take as well, is that, if we agree on that approach that you did for Cloud Memory Store, then the rest of it would be fairly mechanical for all the other types.
Absolutely.
Cool. You probably saw that I was adding backups in. One of the nice things that Suskin did was start adding the backups, and it makes it really easy to navigate around. So I just was dropping those in. Okay, so the next one is implement strongly typed. So 643. So
that's a pull request. So in general, I found it to be easier to manage, like from an issue planning, milestone planning thing, to not include pull requests as well. Only include issues on the boards and milestones.
Okay.
Could we have a separate column for pull request?
No, that's not at least in what I found to work well. I found that you're tracking the issues themselves, and then pull requests are kind of a separate thing that don't even show up on the board at all. Because otherwise, you get a lot of duplication. You're like this issue here, and then the pull request for it also, and you're like, wait, hold on, what's the difference here? It's just kind of felt like clutters the board. I believe.
So are you picturing for as this project gets bigger, for all the pull requests from the community, there's going to be like a parallel issue for it, so we don't have to track pull requests?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that most everything has an issue associated with it.
Makes sense.
Awesome. Okay.
And why is that pull request showing? Because it has a milestone associated assigned to it, or why is it showing up on the board?
Yeah, it says there's new activity, but I'm not positive. I have to go dig into that, so we can do that offline and then get that cleaned up so it does what you're looking for.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it has any association with Milestone, Project, Epic, anything, but so I'm not exactly sure. It might just be because it references an issue in the Epic.
Yeah.
I bet that's it. So
yeah. And in general, we should be saying like this closes blank or something like that.
Yeah, it says fixes number. Yeah.
There you go. That's probably why. Yeah. Sweet. Okay, so that's the in progress. Is there anything that's in progress that's not on the board? Okay. So as far as the sprint backlog goes, I think we're saying, hey, let's go and try and drive this from the roadmap and the prioritized features that y'all have kind of been breaking out from the epics. So do we want to keep any of these in? These two are the ones that I pulled in from the parent, so I can talk about those first really fast. Just get mine out of the way. So as part of the 0.3 docs epic to enable users to rapidly understand Crossplane, get started quickly, and find the information they're looking for. We have this epic, and then down at the bottom I have these two issues. So one is getting kind of a ubiquitous language into the concepts MD. A visual diagram is something I think Marcus recommended that shows the different concepts, and then and getting like a glossary MD perhaps that kind of has like all of the terms with definitions, so that when we're talking about something that's like the canonical source. And then the next one is basically getting the roadmap updated to 0.3 with follow-on drops for 0.4 and 0.5 as we get those elaborated. So when we look at 636, that basically is just going over the terms and concepts and getting it broken out, and then some of the tasks down here at the bottom. And so that's something that I'll be working on over the next week or two, but doing it in conjunction with everybody from both SIGs. And so really it's just focused on curating all of the existing usage and converging on a set of well-defined concepts and language. So any questions on that one? And then the next one is 0.3 milestone content. So I have a draft PR out for this, but effectively the roadmap's out of date with all the awesome progress we've been making on 0.3. So this is just going to bring it up to date. And so if we go and look at the roadmap, so this is the PR, and so that has all of the 0.3 epics bulleted out that we've been refining over the past little while. Those are the two that I'm pulling in. I didn't label it with services or stacks, but I guess we should probably label them with both, just so that they show up kind of in both boards and stuff, so we can see how that's progressing. But having kind of shared features is something we'll need to talk about offline. That's what I had. This one up here, figure out model for cross-plane core versus extensions.
That sounds like that should be part of the epic around moving everything out of the repo, or creating private provider specific stacks.
Yep. Cool.
So I'll just link that or
Okay, do you want to do that in the background? That'd be
yeah.
awesome. Cool.
531.
And is that something that we're then doing as part of this current sprint, or would that be in the next sprint?
Yeah, I think we are doing it in this sprint. Yeah.
And then who's the owner of this?
I think I am.
Okay.
So we did the first GCP one. That's like kind of along the same lines. ZenHub consistently confuses me. It's too much. I'm a simple man, a simple person. There's just too much, man.
Yep. So we're going to be talking about potentially moving to GitHub projects, but yeah, that's probably a separate a separate topic. I hear you. Okay, so that's updated. So then if we go back to the roadmap in terms of pulling in additional items, so Dan, so for 613, are we good to go with what's on the board right now, or do you want to pull in anything else?
I think everything is on the board for this, right?
So like in terms of like being in the sprint column, so 594 and 595, if we were to go back to, so all we have on the board is 90, which is getting moved out, and then you're going to create a new one that represents kind of all of them. 634 is on the board. I mean, the epic is on the board. It's you know, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe having the epics on the board is a good thing like this, but oftentimes I'll have like separate boards, one for epic level and one for kind of feature level.
Okay.
And so do we want to bring in those other two, I guess, and put them onto the sprint backlog for this sprint?
Yeah, I'd like to move in both the documentation and examples one, as well as the one that's to be decided. So I'll move that in after this call.
Okay, cool. So we'll pull in 594. So let's see if I can do this. Cool. That's pretty painless. And then you'll have the other one. So if we go back to the roadmap, so for the next one for Stacks Manager,
Yeah, I think this is entirely a Stacks team thing, so we can talk about this in the other sprint planning for Stacks this afternoon.
okay, including the stuff that MoveOffIC's doing. I guess that's already on the board.
That's a part of 612. That's not part of 609.
Oh yeah, okay, got it. Yep, you're right. Okay, so then going back to 612, so the only thing here, I guess, that's part of this SIG is the 502.
Can you, is your vertical size of your window maximized, or can you make it a little taller?
Yeah, sorry, I should have opened it in a new tab.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so I would hope that you know, like definitely 502 needs to be in the sprint, which I think it already is, and then 651 probably should be as well, like to get cracking on the GCP stack as like the reference one, at least.
So you want to pull 651 in?
Yeah.
Just a quick question. These epics are for 0.3, correct? So we expect to have all epics closed by 0.3?
That's correct, Dan.
Awesome.
Great. Anything else on the infrastructure stacks one? So basically all three of these are in.
Yeah.
31, and then we got 651, and then we got 502. Cool. Okay, so for the AWS stack, both habits die hard. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I created 2 sub-issues for those. You could add those to stack 5.
Okay, so 655 and 660.
Yes.
Awesome.
And for the remaining of the related items, which is suggested, I'm gonna get back to it. I'm not sure if it's gonna be this sprint or next sprint, but as soon as I finish these ones, I'll get back to those.
Cool. Okay, so go ahead.
So as a summary then, Phil, like what we're trying to accomplish in the very near term, and then I think it's a bit up in the air in terms of how much time it takes, because there will be significant coordination that's necessary. But the immediate term tasks are get the KubeBuilder research done with the proposal and understanding of how to migrate there and what we need to change, and to do that across the entire repo. That's one thing that's being driven in the current repo. And then after that is when I believe that we would be able to start splitting out or copying pieces of functionality to new repos and start building a stack around each one of those. And then I hope that my hope here, and this is up for discussion, but during that effort there, that we'd be making progress on the strongly typed resource classes going across the entire board, as well as the AWS networking stuff. Like that seems to cover the entire team from what all the short-term goals are, but there's definitely some coordination to kind of figure out across those to make sure that that is done as efficiently as possible. I have a feeling that there's more room in the sprint for things beyond that this team is executing really quickly, and there will be things beyond that, but it's a bit of an unknown kind of, how much that coordination aspect will kind of slow things down or cause some bottlenecks. So that's a little bit up in the air.
So from my perspective, what I'm doing for the AWS connectivity stuff, I am working on KubeBuilder 2 repository. I'm trying to import whatever it's in core repo related to AWS into that, and then sort of get to understand what's going on. And at the end of this sprint, what I'm going to be having, that's what I'm planning, is to have saying, hey, this is the AWS connectivity stack that we have, but still we need to have someone. I personally I'm working on KubeBuilder v2, but we're still working on some additional ticket like the one that Wafak is working on to actually take on officially moving stuff from KubeBuilder v1 to v2. Basically meaning I'm not blocked by KubeBuilder v2 migration, but also it doesn't necessarily mean my work is going to be covering moving every type that we have to KubeBuilder v2.
Right. Yeah. Right, Jafad. And I think that's a good example of one potential way to be making independent progress that's on these new networking concepts and types and stuff. Is that'll definitely be a bit difficult to implement, and it'll require some iteration, spinning stuff up in the cloud, seeing it doesn't work, spin it back down. That's not going to be super fast moving, but you're able to do that though, independent of any of the moving parts or moving things inside of the repo that we're upgraded to KubeBuilder 2. I think obviously there's some like, okay, putting it back together at the end is going to have a cost, but you can, work unblocked and independently in the meantime, at least.
I understand that. I feel like for me, it's worth it because I'm also part of my other goals to understand what's going on in entire repos. And it's also for me a little bit of a discoverability to see how things are laid out. So I think it's going to be helpful for me to do that.
Yeah, I think that's good, Javad.
Yeah, Jawad, and also I don't expect a lot of like in-file changes for the ones that we actually implement, but most of the changes would be like moving around the files and import statements, so it should be good to go.
Yeah, that's my expectation is too. Yeah, thanks, Mofak.
And Phil, did we just do the GCP epic, or did I miss that?
Yeah, so we covered that. Do you want to go back to that real quick?
Yeah, actually, I wanted two issues to be pulled in this sprint.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, I think we talked about the feature to split out the GCP stack, Phil, but I don't think we did talk about the content of the GCP, provider and that work from MoveOffic.
Great.
Yeah, so I've created the sub issues. So in this sprint, I am out of office for like 3 days. So after the KubeBuilder 2 stuff, I think 654 and 657. These two issues can be done. Like we can have the network and subnetwork CRs and controllers implemented, but it could be a little bit of stretch for me since I'll be out of office for 3 days.
Okay. So 654, 657.
So is our sprints over 1 month or 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Okay.
All right, that's feeling like a pretty full sprint. So yeah, you all feel pretty good with where this is at, and then we can just see if we're kind of clearing this, and then if we kind of empty the sprint backlog bucket, and we're looking for more stuff to do, we can take a stab in our backlog refinement meeting of next week at the same time. I basically set those up to kind of go, we're doing 2-week sprints. We have the refinement meetings at the same time in the middle of the sprint. And so then we can start getting the backlog prioritized here. That'll then be like, we can just pull from the top of the backlog.
And I think something that will be helpful too, to give us a more complete picture of what is left in this milestone is, all these new issues or features that belong in the epics that we have opened up over the past few days, that they are all marked or included in the milestone, included in milestone 0.3. Because if the epics and all the features that belong to those epics, if they're all in 0.3, then we can do an easy filter on this board to just say, show me milestone 0.3. And that gives us a complete picture of all the work that needs to be completed for this milestone, and, potential look at kind of our burn down and sort of an idea of what's left. And then I think there's some things still in the 0.3 milestone that need to be cleared up and kicked out. So Phil, maybe you or I could take a pass at like cleaning up the milestone and trying to make sure that any stragglers, any of these issues that are part of epics are included in 0.3, and kind of just make sure that we have a complete view of the milestone and what's left. And that'll also put us in a very good position to, as we are operating through these sprints here, to be able to pluck stuff off the backlog and just throw them in the sprint and keep making forward progress.
Definitely. Yeah, let's do that. Great. Okay. Any other comments or suggestions and stuff for this sprint planning? I think we're looking pretty good. But
And the general comment / suggestion. So what is the policy for the number of items that one person could have in progress
Great question. Yeah, I'm going to send a link out to the SIG board that just talks about like whip limits and stuff, and then maybe we can read that, and then in our grooming, maybe we can have a conversation about that, or the backlog refinement meeting. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
You guys.